Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Maxi here once again, and I am back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2, aka Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for those of you who lived in North America, for the Nintendo 3DS/Nintendo Switch, as we are still playing through Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. So anyway, last time we've essentially did manage to completely done everything in terms of mission C-5, which appears to be peace at last, that not only did we somehow manage able to find some more gems, and on top of that we also managed able to rescue yet another Toad, but this time what appears to be Yellow Toad, and on top of all that stuff though, we did somehow manage able to get the Boo at the end, because obviously though, it can be easy to miss if you have a first time playing for this mission, but regardless of everything else though, this mission by far is pretty lengthy so far, so either way though, but it's not going to be until for later on though, which we'll talk more about that during at some point once we make our way to the next month, which appears to be October. So anyway, so today for this video is about the fact that we're going to be tackling through the next mission in Old Clockworks, and this time we're going to be heading over to the boss mission, which does manage to take place in journey forms of the actual clock tower itself. So here we go, on to show time. So either way though, and as far as I'm aware, about the fact that since that we've now got all three of those clock parts, so this means we can now able to actually open up the gate to able to actually access the forms of the clock tower itself. So either way though, so before we get into that though, much like the forms of how it does it in Haunted Towers, as soon as we're able to actually rescue one of the Toads, basically though is about the fact that we can able to actually look around with that particular image right there. So of course about the fact that we can able to see the familiar types of ghosts ranging from Greenie to Slammer, Sneaker, and of course Booze, and on top of all that stuff though, there's also the Processor as well. So either way though, as soon as we're able to actually zoom closer to the Processor right there, obviously though is about the fact that he somehow got the fourth Dark Moon piece as far as this is concerned, especially concerning for the fact that there's also that particular Boo right there that usually caused to summon the forms of those particular spirit balls. So either way though, in addition to that though, is about the fact that yet again, some Boos are still carrying that particular familiar bag ever since Journey Forms have been, that particular M-Cab looks familiar, especially concerning for the fact that, while I already know who it is, especially concerning for the fact that, well, again, we're probably not going to get into any further details from this point right about now, so either way though, and I'm pretty sure about the fact that that's as far as we can able to actually look around for this particular image right now, so relatively speaking now, let's dive right into the actual mission itself, after some more dialogue here and there. So anyway, a few things I want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 23rd of September today, in some cases in 2024 today, and relatively speaking though, it's about the fact that there's quite a number of things I would like to discuss upon today, and usually, relatively speaking though, is about the fact that, well, first of all, is about the fact that you remember how yesterday, about the fact that Pac-Man is going to be trying to mention about the fact that he will be returning back onto Pac-Man World for the Game Boy Advance. Well, that's just mainly because no matter what though, that he did mention about the fact that he will be coming back into that game at some point on Sunday, presumably speaking. Specifically though, the 29th of September, at least as far as I'm concerned, because, well, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that I don't know if what's gonna happen during at some point on Saturday or something like that, but I suppose time will tell, especially concerning for the fact that at this point in time, we've only got about exactly 8 more days to go until we are about to be approaching onto the 10th month, which is of course October, which is around that time when Halloween is about to be going nearby, and on top of that, with the forms of Super Mario Party Jamboree's release, in addition to Sonic X Shadow Generations will be releasing during that time as well. So either way, and it's also worth noting for is about the fact that we've only got about exactly 3 more days to go until The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom will be releasing on the Nintendo Switch, so I'm still basically excited for it, and I'm sure about the fact that a lot of gamers out there will be also pretty much excited for that particular game as well, so Now, as far as I'm aware, there is technically one last gem we can probably try to get in the forms of an old Clockworks. So, but first of all, let's place the rest of the forms of those clock parts in here.
Oh. Ah. Oh. Oh.
So now the gate is now functioned. Now, before you're able to actually activate the gate opening, basically though, we need to pay attention to that particular numbers. If you look closely enough on the movements through the hall, basically though, it's about the fact that, remember why I said this before, since in doing the forms within the first mission, in Old Clockworks, you need to pay attention to the forms of 3 numbers, which there are 730. What that stands for? Well, if you know the time of the actual clock already, this actually signifies 7:30. So because of that though, yeah, we need to try to match the exact time as the forms of 7:30. So because of that though, once you do manage to solve it, then we can now able to proceed. So either way though, and here we are into the actual movements room for reals this time. And now we need to make our way up there, so that pretty much leads us to the destination that we're about to be heading off to. So either way, but before we get onto that though, let me just double check if there are certain secrets around here, including the final gem we can probably try to get in here. So, relatively speaking, I was about the fact that if you're trying to actually scan that particular visible object, as you saw familiar, that will actually opens up the actual treasure chest, and what's to expect, it gives us more money. And there you go. As you can see, we did manage to suck up some sand on that particular glass window, and that pretty much gives us the 13th and the final gem we can now finally obtain during the forms of an Old Clockworks. So naturally though, we can now able to actually just try to see what the actual specific statue looks like if we somehow managed to check out the forms of EGAT's vault again, assuming of course about the fact that we need to take care of the rest of the stuff during the forms of an Old Clockworks before we move on to the next mansion. So anyway, so from this point right here is about the fact that all we have to do is pretty simple. It's about the fact you're just gonna have to suck up or trying to blow with the forms of Poltergeist 5000 with those little spinny wheels, and as a result you can to actually go upwards. So yeah, nothing else to really say about this, I guess. Although there are some occasional moments where the fact that we do need to collect some bit of money, gold bars, and especially noticeable there might be some gold spiders here and there. So anyway, oh jeez. That was very unexpected, but here we are in the forms of Bullfry Clock, and as a result, this will pretty much lead us to the next boss in the game, which ultimately though is all about endurance run. So basically though is about the fact that in order to try to deal with the forms of processor right there, basically though is about the fact that we must to recover one of those numbers if you do manage to clear out mostly ghosts as well as certain enemies we can to deal with until later, because as you can tell about the fact that, well, usually from the start of the fight, basically though the processor did somehow manage to remove any other numbers ranging from 1 to 12, so relatively speaking though, you also have to watch out for the forms of that particular minute hand, because otherwise though, if you dare touch the forms of the minute hand, and eventually at some points with the hour hand as well, basically though is about the fact that that can hurt you. So either way though, and relatively speaking though is about the fact that I honestly have no idea why it gets like a top-down perspective right there, there, especially concerning for the fact that, after all, we on the actual clock after all. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that, well, on the first phase, basically though, we need to able to recover 1 through 4 numbers. So as far as I'm aware, that will pretty much guarantees us about the fact that once we do manage to able to deal out with the forms of abundance of greenies, but as well as certain slammers as well, basically though, it's about the fact that if you do manage to recover the first 4 numbers on the actual clock, the processor now decides to come out of bed, and as a result though, he plays pretty much exactly the same as the forms of how it does it on not only Gloomy Manor, but as well as the forms of Haunted Towers, so there's nothing different from there. But the noticeable difference is this time around though is that, like I said this before, that the processor now has 3 horns. In addition to that though, that the actual clock can't get in your way this time around though, especially concerning for the fact that unlike in Haunted Towers though, I found it was very simple and easy. Whilst in here though, this is where the actual processor boss battles might get a little bit tricky this time around though, but that's besides the point. So yeah, that pretty much does it for the first phase of this particular fight. So now we're on to the second phase, that we now need to recover numbers 5 through 8. And as far as I'm aware, the third and final phase is pretty self-explanatory, just to recover numbers 9 through 12. So because of that though, yeah, just to ensure for the fact that we have to once again try to able to actually get, you know, processor for about 3 times consecutively for the actual function and all that stuff though. So yeah, I will admit though, this particular mission can be very lengthy sometimes, especially concerning for the fact that it kind of reminds me like a similar concept as the forms of one of those portrait ghosts that you fight in Journey forms of towards the end game of Luigi's Mansion 1, which appears to be about the fact you also could have to deal with the abundance of ghosts and stuff like that. Like, you can able to actually face off against with any other different types of regular ghosts before you take on the main threat of that particular portrait ghosts in Journey forms within the actual, the Archer Studio room, at least specifically in Area 4. So either way though, yet again though, is about the fact that, again, if you come across into those specific greenies, they do have like shields in them. Best recommendation is to use the dark lights, so just in case you can able to stun them for a bit. So just to ensure for the fact that it won't give you that much trouble. So either way though, I apologize for that particular tongue twist in the end folks, but that's just mainly because I will admit though right away, it has been about 3 days ago since we've last played this game for sure, especially concerning for the fact that, well, we are getting so close that, like I said before, that we are getting very close to the point where The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is slowly releasing. In addition to that though, it's about the fact that until tomorrow, that Disney's Epic Mickey rebrushed in multiple platforms ranging from PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, PC Steam, and of course the Nintendo Switch versions will be also going to be on its way during at some point until tomorrow, which as a result, I'm not exactly sure how the reviews is actually going to turn out to be, but I'm sure we'll find out more about it during at some point in the next couple of days, assuming of course about the fact I can probably try to mention about it, or perhaps even maybe we'll let Ray the Flying Squirrel will mention more about that specific detail when he goes back onto playing through The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Remake on Switch. So either way, so yeah, basically though, we're now on to the third and final phase of the forms of this mission, because like I said before, we are now about to be recovering numbers 9 through 12, and as far as I'm aware, this is where the fight starts to get a little bit more intense and difficult at the same time, because now that we now need to able to try to avoid not only the minute hand, but as well as the hour hand as well during the forms of this process, because I'm pretty sure if you manage to let the time run out, basically though is about the fact that you might have to restart that particular phase again or something like that. Well, it kind of reminds me like a similar concept as well from the likes of the forms of the Phantom optional boss fight in Kingdom Hearts 1. Well, to be more specifically though, in the English version alongside with the Final Mix version on PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3 as well as PlayStation 4 release as well, and even especially noticeable with multiple platforms as well nowadays with Xbox, PC, as well as Nintendo Switch cloud versions. Even though I found it was a little bit amusing is about the fact that the original Japanese release of Kingdom Hearts 1 doesn't seem to able to actually include the Phantom boss fight in Journey Forms of Neverland. So yeah, it seems kind of interesting all things considered. So anyway, and as you can see, there's a lot of bombs that we definitely need to avoid. Especially concerning for the fact that if you accidentally use the strobe bulb, things gets a lot more pure chaos around here. Unless if you're trying to able to actually trust those hands to able to actually decide able to protect you from explosion or something. So anyway, now we move on to the final number, which obviously though is going to be I won't classify for saying everything else, basically, ranging from Greenie to Sneaker and pretty much everything. So because of that, though, yeah, this is insanity if you ask me. Especially concerning for the fact that, well, luckily though, every time whenever you do manage able to face off against with the forms of specific ghosts as we pretty much used to at this point. Basically though, it's about the fact that if you keep on getting hit, thankfully though, there's a lot of like hearts you can able to actually try to accumulate if you do manage able to try to able to, well, not to do too much damage or something. So either way, so now we can able to actually recover every single numbers at this point right now. So this means we got one thing left, and that's of course trying to able to actually just to, you know, capture the possessor. So either way, that was awfully close right there. Especially I'm almost gonna get hit right there. And yeah, if you took too long while he's got stunned, basically though he'll just go for that particular attack again. So, and there we go. So let's just go ahead and fill up, and there we go. So that pretty much does it for showtime, and that pretty much does it for the third possessor, and as a result, we can now claim ourselves the fourth Dark Moon piece.
Oh. Oh. Yeah. Ho-ho. Yeah.
So yeah, 4 pieces down and only 2 pieces to go. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact I kind of believe we are almost getting pretty close towards the end of Luigi's Mansion 2. Mind you, about the fact that at this point in time, we've still got a lot of things to take care of, but let's not get ahead of ourselves at this point right now. So yeah, everything else checks out there.
Ho-ho. Whew. Oh.
Although, generally speaking, I was about the fact that you probably already realized about the fact that we are still not done yet in terms of the forms of old Clockworks as far as the mansion itself goes, because there is still technically one more mission to go. And once you look at that, we got ourselves a yet another 3-star medal ranking. So yeah, we're doing pretty well in terms of the forms of our ranking results, apart from a few exceptions. But then again though, I will try my best able to actually go for the best rank if possible on my spare own time, so just to ensure for the fact that you don't want to see the actual exact same missions all over again. Well, apart from the fact that if I do ended up missing something like a gem or a boo, then obviously that was about the fact that, again, I can easily try to able to cut out the specific parts of it though. So just to ensure for the fact I can show you guys where exactly the gems were, in addition to certain boos were hiding. So yeah, that's as far as I can try to explain about that. So anyway, so now we somehow claim ourselves the 4th Dark Moon piece. So not only about the fact that we'll give that particular Dark Moon piece a bit of a clean, but also about the fact that before that, we somehow got ourselves the 13th and the final gem, in addition to that possessor that we somehow captured. So naturally speaking, I was about the fact that we got a ton of money, especially concerning for that particular, you know what I'm talking about, with the suction upgrades and stuff like that. So yeah, that really does help me a lot, especially concerning for the fact that if I was trying to go for 400% completion, which I will admit though, I don't think it's possible we can able to go for a 400% completion for this entire Let's Play of this game though, to me though, because not only it's very tedious whenever we do somehow manage to able to capture some exclusive ghosts in one of those specific modes, but it's a bit time consuming in the process when it comes to trying to able to get these specific ghosts in one of those specific modes, which then again though, that particular topic can wait during at some point in the later days to come, for specifically though for October for the sake of time. So either way, so there's our 4th Dark Moon piece has been recovered, and that pretty much leads us to the 4th mansion. So yeah, we are going above and beyond when it comes to able to try to go for a different environment, which this time around though is going to take place somewhere in the snowy mountains. So yeah, it kind of reminds me like a similar vibes as you able to explore around Turian from The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, except the fact that obviously that is about the fact that Turian can be not only creepy, but it's also very dark as well, in terms of the actual tone and all that stuff, which, yeah, that's as far as I can usually try to think about that, I guess. So either way, so yeah, as I said before, we've only got 2 pieces left to able to fully recover the Dark Moon itself. So yeah, we are definitely getting some really good progressioning here. So either way though, and this will pretty much lead us to Secret Mine. So yeah, it feels like we're going through a different theme to a different theme, one form or another. So yeah, this is actually kind of interesting. So either way, so of course, about the fact that we somehow able to actually unlock the extra mission right here for Old Clockworks, which is essentially I'm going to be doing this right about now. So here we go with Outlandish Interruption. So either way though, as be expected, we can able to catch the last batch of ghosts before we move on to the next mansion, which is of course Secret Mine. Now, in regards of the forms of Secret Mine though, actually we'll save that particular topic and during at some point, also during the forms of in October sometime. But relatively speaking, I was about the fact that let's get on with the forms of another discussions I would like to point out. Well, the next thing I want to say about this is about the fact that, well, suffice to say though, I've recently downloaded the next iOS update, and that's what appears to be iOS 18, the most recent software update, and it does manage to bring quite a number of new features has been added, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, anyways, let's get on with this mission, shall we? So, luckily though, about the fact that when it comes to the forms of trying to capturing specific ghosts in this mission, thankfully though, the majority of those ghosts are most likely going to take place in the actual Old Clockworks mansion itself. So thankfully though, we don't have to traverse into not only the underground caverns, but as well as the forms of some rooms based off on the likes of Peace at Last mission. So yeah, this will be self-explanatory. So anyway, there's also another thing worth mentioning for actually, is about the fact that, well, not only do we able to get ourselves not only 1 Super Nintendo game, but 4 Super Nintendo games have recently been added to the Nintendo Switch Online service. So as a result though, I would say one of them is actually from English, and then the other 3 are actually Japanese exclusives. So as a result, not only do we have 1 Super Nintendo game, but also 3 Super Famicom games. So yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. Although, I will admit though right away, the lineup is a bit alright, but let's run down the list to see what games have been revealed during the forms event. I would say about the fact that it did already happen since and around 5 days ago roughly. So because of that though, the first game they did somehow able to actually include, that's what appears to be Battletoads Double Dragon, which is kind of like a I would say like a crossover between both Battletoads and Double Dragon at the same time or something like that. Well, mind you, I haven't exactly looked upon that much of it though, but that's just mainly because no matter what though, I definitely heard about Battletoads basically, because obviously though, those games are super duper tough. So, but either way though, and also they somehow include a dodgeball game that is made in Japan, which appears to be Ken no Dodgeball da yo Zenyin Zengari. I do apologize for that particular budget little Japanese language of that particular game, but usually relatively speaking it is so incredibly difficult to able to pronounce specific games for Japanese versions for specific games. But anyway, and there's also the forms of a puzzle game, which it kind of reminds me of like a similar vibes as in Pack Attack, except the fact that it's going to be called Cosmo Gang the Puzzle. So yeah, it's actually kind of a weird name for a title. And finally though, they somehow bring up Big Run, which as a result, it's basically it kind of reminds me of Outrun from the Sega games, except the fact that, well, obviously though, it's on the Super Nintendo. So because of that though, yeah, I will admit though, the selection is not great to me though. Like, I do really wish about the fact that they'll try to add it in, not only Donkey Kong 64, but as well as Diddy Kong Racing, in addition to Super Smash Bros. Like, seriously though, a lot of fans out there are super desperately want to play, not only Donkey Kong 64, but as well as Diddy Kong Racing, and even Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64 on online play, which that would be pretty cool though. but I suppose we'll have to wait and see what happens, especially concerning for the fact that at this point in time, that the Nintendo Switch 1 is almost nearly at the end of the actual roadmap when it comes to the evolves the lifespan before Nintendo decides to move on to the next project, when it comes to the evolves of game systems alike. So either way though, that's as far as I can try to say about this, I guess. So anyways though, and also about the fact that I felt it was very cool about the fact that we actually got ourselves our first look of that particular shadow poster from the likes of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, and I'm gonna say, it looks incredibly cool, especially concerning not only because it was so cool, but it's also about the fact that, well, for what I can tell, about the fact that it only is gonna happen in during the events of it not only in America, but as well as maybe Canada as well. That's basically though, is about the fact that something huge is about to happen. Well, it already did happen since in during the events of on Friday, potentially, that if you do manage to actually decide to go ahead and watch Transformers 1, basically though is about the fact you can to actually receive an exclusive printed shadow poster for Transformers 1 ticket holders in opening day, which it already did happen, mind you. So relatively speaking though, yeah, that's actually kind of cool and interesting at the same time. So anyway, and unfortunately though, about the fact that we've come across into the most unfortunate news has been happened, at least to be more specifically though, if you're trying to go after the physical copy of Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, basically what happens was though, is that unfortunately though, well, usually relatively speaking though, is about the fact that the digital version has already came out, and as far as the physical release, it's going to release in June at some point on the 22nd of November. So relatively speaking though, oh yeah, that's what happens right there if you lose control right there, and basically though you lose your bit of your health. So because of that though, what's the point of going that way to begin with? Because I can definitely tell about the fact that I just double checked on my map and just to ensure for the fact that if I don't ended up missing some of these specific ghosts and all that stuff. So anyway, as I was saying about the fact that obviously though the physical version of Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics is still going to be listed as in the 22nd of November. So relatively speaking, I was about the fact that what I thought was a little bit disappointing to me though, is that usually on the PlayStation 4 version, you're able to actually get yourselves the disc inside the actual box. However, on the Switch version, it's going to contain a code in the actual specific box. So meaning about the fact that if you somehow redeem that, well, obviously though is about the fact that, well, I just don't know why about the fact that they just somehow managed to go for the code inside kind of system, specifically on the Switch version, because I already know for the fact that unlike the defaults of how it does it in Mega Man Legacy Collection 1 and 2, as well as Mega Man X Legacy Collection, in addition to the defaults of, I would classify for saying, Battle Network Legacy Collections or something like that, that usually you get yourselves the first volume as on a game card. However though, if you're trying to go out of your way to get the second volume, well, too bad for you is about the fact you have to redeem that particular download code in order to actually get the second volume of that specific compilation games or something like that. So yeah, it's a little bit a nuisance to me though, especially concerning for the fact that I did have some high expectations to actually try out Marvel vs. Capcom alongside with Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for the first time, but unfortunately though, it's probably not going to happen, mind you, mainly because at this point in time, that not only I'm running out of room when it comes to physical Switch games, I mean, it is definitely a bit possible for me to try to get the actual compilation game digitally, but it's already depending on the forms of the file sizes and all that stuff, so that's besides the point. So, oh, and speaking of which, when it comes to Disney's Epic Mickey Rebrush, that yes indeed, we actually got ourselves the final trailer before the actual game comes out, so generally speaking, there's nothing else I can really say about that, I guess, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, they did manage to mention a lot of improvements that we somehow come across into, and in addition to that though, that's as far as I can talk about that game. So anyway, yet again, we've got ourselves a glorious 3-star medal, so yeah, just like the forms of how it does it in Haunted Towers, we're actually doing that particular mansion pretty well, especially concerning for the fact that, well, you know, if we try to able to collect even more money, then the more we try to get a lot of upgrades in no time. Especially concerning about the fact that they'll makes the entire end game right there will make things a lot more comfortable and manageable at the same time. Despite there are some things to worry about, but either way though. So of course, we somehow managed able to accomplish every single aspect in terms of old Clockworks, except with the falls that one last 3-star medal, which is actually going to be on the very first mission, which then again though, I will do this on my spare own time. So relatively speaking though, everything else checks out there for old Clockworks. So yeah, that particular mansion was actually pretty cool and everything, especially concerning for the fact that not only it actually contains a lot more puzzles to solve, but also about the fact I do really like the actual environment that does manage to take place. So either way though, so now we can able to proceed into the 4th mansion, which is of course Secret Mine. So, but before we get into that though, there's also another thing worth mentioning for, and that's what appears to be about the fact that yes indeed, Nintendo has officially announced the end of Splatoon 3 after the events of the Grand Festival event, which obviously though that already happened during the events around a couple of days ago. So because of that though, yeah, it's kind of sad though, although I'm pretty much sure about the fact that once the next Nintendo system is going to be rolled around, I'm pretty sure about the fact that they'll try to able to actually bring Splatoon 4 and during at some point in the future, but I have no idea of what's gonna happen during at some point for the sake of certain years to come. So either way, so yeah, let's just go and going back onto the forms of that particular EGAD's vault real quickly. So just to ensure we can able to see what really happens if we manage to collect all of those gems in old Clockworks, and let's see what we got this time in terms of the forms of the statue design. Well, I can definitely say that Luigi is actually a lot more confident now, especially that unlike the forms of how he does it in gloomy manner, that he's actually quite frightened. So now, at this point in time, is that the more we try to get some later gems to come, that we might able to actually see Luigi is a lot more confident now, and also a lot more braver, and a lot more, well, you know, you get the idea for this point. So either way though, so yeah, that's as far as we can able to say about the forms of today's topic at this point guys, and suffice to say for this point is that we got endings off for this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Luigi's Mansion 2, aka Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for those of you who lived in North America. Is that yes indeed, we're about to be traversed into the 4th mansion, which is called Secret Mine, and as to be expected, there are some more missions to tackle. So yeah, this will be exciting, so I'll see you guys until on Wednesday. Later fellas.